Randy Stair, age 24 in 2017, and mostly known by his older channel named Andrew Blaze. He was a mentally ill individual who lived in Dallas, Pennsylvania, and he committed a serious crime of 3 of his coworkers in a mass shooting at a local Weis supermarket, and shortly thereafter, he himself. After the shooting, it was discovered that Stair had left a big social media footprint, especially on YouTube. He was most notably obsessed with the character Ember from the Nickelodeon cartoon Danny Phantom, and he even made a fictional group of girls all based on the character called Ember's Ghost Squad. Even though Stair did not commit a school he idolized the Columbine High School incident. Eric Harris and Dylan Claiborne wrote about committing a similar crime, and even made a cringy animated video of a school being attacked, and wrote that Weis Supermarket is officially Columbine High School. He said that he would have gone back to his old high school and it up, but it would have been demolished the year he graduated. He also believed he was a woman trapped in a man's body, and would often cross-dress when his family wasn't home. According to him in a video, he wrote in his journal and filmed home videos of himself planning the massacre and discussing his thoughts, which were all uploaded onto his now deleted Mediafire page. He also planned to put a propane tank on his boss's desk. However, it didn't explode. And before we unravel this strange yet vile crime, it begs me to ask a lot of questions, such as his reasons for why he decided to do the things he did, or what sort of head trip he went through that brought him to that level of violent behavior. Some of you watching this may even be asking the same questions, but do not worry, my friends, I have your answers for those potential questions here. Stay tuned, as I will showcase the mentally warped crime, as well as the story of a very sad individual. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you subscribe, leave a like, and I hope you enjoy this video. Living in Pennsylvania all his life, Randy Stair grew up alongside his older brother Jeremy and his 2 parents. Although his childhood was prone to mild bullying growing up, Randy didn't seem to deal with a large amount of it until he reached high school. It was here that he felt like an outcast, a boy that didn't fit into social norms, that didn't have those friendship circles like we normally do. Feeling alone and depressed, he used YouTube to express himself in comedic and outgoing ways, with one of his videos titled Mr. Horsehead Meets Mr. Wooden Alligator. It managed to get its way onto an episode of Equals 3 by a once popular YouTuber, Ray William Johnson, and it was viewed by millions. Randy himself didn't gain massive success from YouTube, but he did have a small cult following from his later animations he devoted a lot of his free time to. It was on YouTube that Randy managed to feel happy thanks to the attention he sought after through his videos. He made friends, fans, and most importantly, he had a getaway from the depressive world he saw around him. In the tapes, really shortly before his death, Randy couldn't hide his deep-vented anger towards his father. Whilst he held some hatred towards his mother too, most of the frustrations came from his dealings with his father, who he accused of berating Randy. Stories were told of Robert Stair constantly berating his son for not finding a full-time job and not meeting expectations his father wanted. Their relationship was strained and toxic, and it was obvious from these tapes that Randy's anger and self-loathing came from his father's supposed displeasure from him. This sort of makes sense as to why Randy chose not to express himself outside of the confounds of his room. If you've already delved into this case and done your research onto it, then you may have stumbled across a number of references to the show Danny Phantom, a show about a half-ghost hero who sets out to save the world and beat up ghosts with his powers? If so, do not worry, you are still on track. Towards the end of his high school years, Randy came across the show, and although it wasn't foreign to him, he began to take a great liking to it. One character, especially in particular, Ember McLean. She personified a lot of the feelings that Randy held, and the character was a villainous musician who craved attention, thus gaining power from people chanting her name. Before she died, she was an unpopular high school girl who dreamed of being a rock star. After being stood up and waiting all night, she returned home the next morning to sleep, but succumbed to a house fire. Randy himself felt a connection to the character due to his lack of popularity, and loved the song Remember, which the character has sang. It was the character's demise that truly resonated with Randy, who also felt that his death would bring mass attention to himself. In the show, Ember's power is gained from people who say her name. In her episode, she attempts to gain this power after a worldwide broadcast of the song Remember. I undoubtedly believe Randy's attraction to the character pushed him to want that same infamy, but one he would not get from his normal life. Something extravagant must happen for Randy to get the attention both he and Ember craved, I guess. The happiness Randy felt from video making did not last as long as he hoped, however, and was soon overcome with the depressive state of his outside world. In the tapes, Randy himself was surprised that he hadn't committed yet, admitting he never thought that he would have reached 2016. By this time, he began to devote much of his time towards the Ember Ghost Squad animations, with the help of his online friendships. Through his animation work, he had made friends that would help him with the animation and even voice acting for the characters he created. Although Randy voiced the character of Andrew Blaze, a character based around himself, he also relied on others to help with voicing the other characters. And in some instances, according to his tapes, Randy had been let down numerous times by fellow animators. And I wonder why. In his final video, titled Andrew Blaze's Westboro High Massacre, Randy begins the video with a wall of text, shaming the animators who shoved him aside, saying,
"To all of the people who screwed me over on this video and left me hanging, f*** you. To all of the animators who agreed to help me and shoved me aside as if it didn't even matter, f*** you. To everyone who agreed to help in general and made me feel like I didn't even matter, f*** you. To the fans who will appreciate what I managed to get done with this in 5 months completely on my own, thank you. There are going to be some missing shots left unfinished in this video with animatics in place of the black holes due to 0 of the 10 plus animators whom I reached out to even lifting a finger to help out. I've been stepped on my whole life. Not anymore. I've had enough of this putrid planet and I'm gonna leave my mark. I'm going back to where I truly belong, the EGS. By April 2017, I knew full well that I was completely on my own for this video, so I just had to make do with whatever came to mind. This was meant to be a 10-minute long animated production, instead it's about 2 minutes worth. What the f*** ever. I don't want to keep bullshitting about what could've and should've been. I just wanted to do something big. And just when I was about to, I get shit on. Just this channel was going to have a big future, now it's just going to rot and be deader than the souls it's based on. To the fans who have supported me from 2008 to 2017, thank you. I hope you enjoy what little I have left to show for how much work went into this. I spent 5 months on this, and it wasn't even close to being finished. So rather than kill myself for 8 months, I threw in the towel after 5 months. I wish I didn't have to end on an imperfect note, but at the same time, I feel accomplished. I did what I could, and that's all that matters.
The video itself is unfinished in places due to the lack of help he received from 10 plus animators, according to Randy. It was here that Randy again felt inferior to those he felt happiest around, his only escape from his lonely, unsuccessful life. was online. But once these issues began to rise, he lost that feeling of comfort. It became another place where he felt powerless and inferior due to his friends he did not get full support from. A supposed friend of Randy's named Skater said that Randy was a perfectionist. In order to get that craved attention, he needed to impress, and thus was devoted to making what he deemed a perfect video. The fact that he was unable to complete the video in time, as well as it being left with numerous errors, showed what sort of state Randy was in. He no longer felt the need to complete the video properly, and his last place of solace crumbled around him, leaving behind the depressive world he so desperately wanted to avoid. After 5 months of trying to piece together his final video, it was uploaded on June 8th of 2017. After blaming the animators for the missing shots, the video presents the Ember Ghost Squad seeking revenge on a Westboro high school. The massacre is interrupted at points by homemade videos of Randy showing off his firearms, showing a small tour of his workplace, and explaining his future actions. His tapes are also released shortly after. Not long after, Randy barricades the exits to the Weiss Markets in Eaton Township and proceeded to start a spree. 3 people are before Randy puts the gun in his and fatally pulls the trigger. In his last video, there is a clip of Randy flipping a coin to determine his own fate, a massacre. The coin lands, and the choice is for the latter, which he deems his fate. This itself brings to light one of Randy's most concurrent tendencies. Randy Stair did not take any responsibility for any of his shortcomings, and the tapes that he left behind provide many hours of explanations and reasoning to the actions in his life, but at no point does he truly blame himself for these problems. It's true that some moments in his life were unavoidable for him. His lack of full-time employment is an issue for many struggling teenagers in America, and the fact that his online friends could not help him was not his own choice, obviously. But Randy Stair had a tendency to pass blame onto others before himself. The fact he was a perfectionist may have made him uneasy to work with, or his selfish-ass nature that spread its way into other people's lives. For instance, Randy once purposely drove for hours in order to avoid his mom on Mother's Day. He also mentioned that he purposely avoided his family on festive holidays because he simply didn't want to. It's these instances that left me questioning how far Randy actually went to work on these instances in his life. There were plenty of opportunities for him to make amends with himself and the negative parts in his life, yet he didn't attempt to, nor did he give a damn. Some people have also speculated that he has a disability called pathological demand avoidance, short for PDA. It is a condition that is part of the autism spectrum, which consists of a lot of features, such as resisting and avoiding ordinary demands of life, role-playing comfortably, experiencing excessive mood swings, and the list can go on if you do your research.
Me and Andrew are going to give the world a little insight as to what really lurks around in the shadows of your everyday lives. It's our time to rise.
This can very much correlate with Randy's perception of his father, although we are not exactly sure how demanding Robert Stair was, but this can explain why Randy felt such a hatred towards his father when it came to his expectations. This part in Randy's life could have been a simple question on how his job search is going, and maybe suggesting certain choices for him. For Randy, this could have been seen as a demand from his father, and thus fueling his anger towards him. Those with PDA usually end up lashing out and causing an outburst due to their anxiety reaching a certain degree. As we have seen in Randy's anger towards his fellow animators, he does not handle these sort of scenarios well. Instead of reasoning with them and taking into account his own faults, he is very quick to pass blame onto others and trying to feel superior in these sort of events. As you know now, Randy had a great obsession with withdrawing into fantasy, He felt his most comfortable when surrounded by his cartoons and his online fans and animations. It got to the point to where he even created his own fantasy land, donning the persona of Andrew Blaze and using his last days on Earth to praise the EGS as well as give subtle warnings of the Massacre. As for the media, it's so easy to pass blame onto other subjects of interest, like people, video games, and subcultures. But it's cases like this that show how wrong they can be. Randy wasn't a victim to modern-day influences, nor was he a victim of the world around him. As much as he tried, Randy Stair simply could not control his life and pushed it away until he could no longer hide from it. He took no responsibility for his actions and ultimately took the lives of 3 other people in order to gain any sort of control of himself. His selfish-ass desire to live happily was the fault of no one but his own. Had Randy taken responsibility for his actions and realized that the world is not always going to be on your side, Victoria, Brian, and Terry would be at home today with their families. Thankfully, Randy Stair did not achieve his final wish. Months of hard work, creating his cringy characters, and a story to accompany his selfish take on the world did not achieve the infamy he craved. Instead, he will be remembered in that small Pennsylvania town as a little boy who couldn't take responsibility for his own life and ultimately needed to take the lives of 3 innocent victims to get that final feeling of control. In conclusion, Randy, or Andrew, or whatever you wish to call them, was nothing but a sad little human, with a mind ruined and rotted with fantasy, as well as a negative desire to inflict real harm to others for no real reason. It also made me concerned that when this was happening at the time, I wasn't seeing anybody being worried about his actions or what he was posting. Everyone seemed to get some laughs off of it, and from my understanding, nobody attempted reporting these behavioral patterns. The first hint was when he was falling in love with a fictional kid's cartoon character and trying to make them a reality. The second was the negative posts and the way that he finished off his older channel. And the third was his threats against others and the planned days he was going to do what he did. Unfortunately, no one was able to stop this before it took 3 innocent lives away. Keep in mind, everyone, that whenever you see someone demonstrating similar patterns of anger, hatred, threats, or any planned dates of inflicting harm onto others, find some way you can to report and stop this, because I feel that this individual could have changed himself for the better, as well as not committing the crime that he did. But sadly, his mind was set, and he was far gone from redemption. Be safe out there, everyone, and thank you all for watching. Have yourselves a good morning, a good evening, and I hope you all have yourselves a good night.